Welcome back to Sasquatch Theory. In today's episode, we sit down with Marsha, a BFRO researcher, military veteran, and scientist who has spent decades investigating Bigfoot encounters across North America. From face-to-face sightings while on military duty in California to leading expeditions with the BFRO on the East Coast, Marsha's experiences are both chilling and eye-opening. Get ready to hear stories of juvenile Sasquatch, black helicopters, thermal captures, and mysterious encounters that span from California to South Carolina. This is an interview that you won't want to miss. If you guys enjoy Sasquatch Theory, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me here on Sasquatch Theory, feel free to reach out at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. With all that being said, let's dive into Marsha's Bigfoot encounters from North America. All right, Marsha, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for contacting me, Miguel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. You heard Travis's encounters from South Carolina and you reached out to me, and here we are now. If you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your encounters, your experiences, and your research from the very beginning, please.
Oh, thank you. I'm from a little bit of everywhere. Originally from upstate New York, but before I graduated high school, I went to 17 different schools. So pretty much over the eastern side of the United States is where I'm from. And then my time in the Marine Corps, retired from there, and they had me all over the world. And then working for Exxon Mobil as a field geologist. I pretty much home is where I hang my hat anymore. And now that I'm fully retired, I put myself full-time to the BFRO and researching this topic. My first experience with Bigfoot would have been February of 1984. That would have been at not the White Mountains, but the Sierra Mountains in California, at the Bridgeport Marine Corps cold weather training facility at Bridgeport, California. Standing guard duty, what we call fire watch, and working and doing the second shift, midnight to 3. And lo and behold, I'm standing on my pallet in about 8 or 9 inches of snow, and from about 35 feet away, out from behind this huge tree, steps out this very tall, brown, blackish hair Sasquatch. I had a M16 in my hands, and he stepped out from behind the tree. We locked eyes for a good 6 or 7 full Mississippis, and I just didn't know how to respond to that. Each went back behind the tree and then took off.
Oh, wow.
As fast as it came, and I just stood there like my thumb on the selector switch, not knowing how to. It looked human. I mean, it had straight teeth. It had eyes like human. It had genitalia like a human. It was just huge. I thought I was the biggest, baddest thing in the woods. You know, young Marine, you all think that. And I found out that I wasn't. And I was far from it. Taught me a little humility.
Yeah.
Later, I went to log that in the logbook, and my staff sergeant came by and said, "Listen, I understand strange things happen up here. Just write it down as encountered indigenous life." I said, "Aye, sir." That's what I did. Now I understand that since I admitted to that revelation here about a year ago, online. A couple other Marines have come forward as well, relating their story at this same training facility that a lot of us Marines go to in the winter. And I'm happy for them that we're able to get that off their chest. That's really awesome. Wherever I went in the Marine Corps, I always had this thing about, is there something there in the dark, or is there not something in the dark? And I sort of packed it away. Later, I went on to retire. I had finished my degrees, went to UCLA and UCR, acquired twin master's degrees, and I went to work for doing contract work for the USGS, then later Exxon Mobil. And I started to do a lot of field work for geology. One of the places was Montana. And up there in the mountains, doing some mapping and looking at old gas seams and the different formations, being out in the woods by myself was never really bothered me until I got just outside of, what's that called? Phillipsburg. And I'm camping there, by myself. And later that night, something came into my camp. The shadow cast by the moon put that thing way above my tent. It rattled my pots and pans. It opened 2 ammo cans that I kept like rock chisels and hammers and different things in. And I go, wow, what the hell is that? I just froze. Do I go out there? Do I pull a weapon? What do I do? So in the morning, I'm looking around, and even though there's gravel on the ground, I could still see there's an impression of something, left an impression. I walk around, I follow it. I find this area in waist-high weeds where about 9 to 10 foot sort of circular pattern of grass all matted down. And this is about 45, 50 feet away from my campsite. I look up the slope, and I see this little odd tree trunk about 4.5 inches in diameter, stuck in the ground on the side of the slope, and the root bulb up in the air. Didn't put 2 and 2 together. I just thought, wow, that's some energetic young teenagers. I don't know why they'd mess with my camp for. They're lucky they didn't get shot or get hurt or something like that. It wasn't till, I'd say about 2009, 2010, I started to really question this and of different things I had been encountering. And I mentioned it to my boss, one of our field supervisors, and he said, there's something curious out there too. We really don't want you or any of the other geologists going out in these areas by yourself anymore. It could be potentially dangerous. And that's a supervisor from Exxon telling me that. So I started investigating more. I talked to a couple other people I worked with in the field, and they directed me to the BFRO. At the time, it was called the Blue Boards, the public discussion panels. And I started to read a lot of what they had. And all of a sudden, things started making sense. And I made the connection all the way back to 1984. And just really like, wow, I felt kind of silly then not seeing it and understanding what had been taking place. Well, once I started reading those boards and making cursory introduction with some of those folks, I went back on my business, and now I'm in California and Oregon, and I started going out with a few other different smaller groups in Oregon and Washington, Idaho. a few of them outside Coeur d'Alene and a little place called in Canada. I think everyone knows that place. And all of a sudden, I started to realize there's something more to that for sure. These just weren't a bunch of kooks on the internet. And so I continued working, but it would take me out of the country. And I wasn't fully in the States, and I come back and just didn't have enough time to put into it full time. And once I retired from that, I took early retirement from that and settled here in South Carolina. Then I started looking at it more and more. So I'm going to be serious about this. I'm a scientist. I'm a dual disciplined. I'm an engineering geologist and a meteorologist with master's degrees and experience and licensees to back it up. So I'm going to investigate this. I want to know for sure. So that's what I started doing. My first BFRO expedition went out with those guys in Ohio. That first time had positive FLIR sighting, watching an adult female with 2 juvies as part of a hunting party with 2 males, right in the middle of it. Walked right into the middle of it. And then that same night, sleeping in my tent, sleeping too close to the wall of my tent, and have something push me as if it was kneeling or standing right by my tent, and I could hear it breathing heavily. Even a couple little groans and grumps, and then my cot was at an angle, and I kept sliding down because I was in an incline, and I felt one hand across both my feet push me up my cot. I just couldn't believe that. That was like intense. I rolled off that cot quicker than anything I've been taught in the Marine Corps. I got off that cot. And right then and there said, okay, the game's on. So I started volunteering for more. I started hanging out with other people that this is what they do. So, oh gosh, then between Ohio and Tennessee and Georgia, gosh, West Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, every expedition that came up, I'd volunteer. I'd go. And then I started going out in areas adjacent to where the expeditions were on my own. And then I met a couple of people I knew at the South Carolina DNR and a few people who worked with the forestry department in Georgia. And they would tell me stories and reports, and I'd go follow them up. My first real, since that time in 1984, I was on an expedition in Tennessee, and I had a very odd encounter there where our coordinator had rented this huge tent because we're having rain off and on, and just wanted to keep people dry. But it was a huge tent like you see at a used car dealership, like 25 by 50 or something along that lines. But it took a professional company to come install it. And so the end of the expedition, this is in the fall, and the ranger tells us, well, we have to have everyone out of the park. The entire, not the park, but the area is going to be closed. It's being completely shut down. No one allowed in. Well, we pleaded our case. We have a rental company coming Monday. So he capitulated, said, okay, leave someone here then. And because even the camp host is leaving, our rangers will be at meetings. You'll be here by yourself. Okay. So myself and another person volunteered to stick by ourselves. We were going to be the only people within miles, I guess, in this one area. And Gosh, that's Sunday when everyone was gone. It didn't take more than a few hours that I'm stacking firewood in a wagon to take it over to my campsite, and I look out of my right peripheral vision, and a juvenile squatch stepped out from behind a tree right there at my 3 o'clock. I say juvenile, however, he and I were about the same size. But the hair was thin. You could sort of see like a grayish skin. The neck wasn't fully developed. He was probably 6.5 to 7 feet, maybe 250, 300 pounds. Not the big, massive, no neck type examples you hear about, you see depicted. I just caught my breath, tried not to react, not point, not yell, none of those things, make no eye contact. And I just slowly kept turning my body towards him every time I reached for a piece of wood. And he stayed there for a good, 30, 45 seconds. As soon as I got that area where I'd seen him into my 1:30, 1 o'clock position, he took off and ran again behind another huge tree. I think they call them mock hickories or something like that. And at that point, it's like I would make it obvious that I'm tracking him and stuff like that. So I whipped around real quick and see where he's at. And he was gone. He was just gone. From what I had learned up to that point, that told me that there's more around. Juveniles don't hang out independently. There's adults supervising. So they're around. I assumed that later that night was going to be pretty eventful. I contacted my field partner, who's on the other side of the encampment area, and said, come on down, look what. I told him what happened. Help me track this down, see if there's footprints, etc. Maybe DNA on a tree. So he comes down, we look around. He goes, oh, that's really good. That's really good. We didn't find something convincing. So he went back to his campsite. And about a half hour later, he said, you know what, Marsha, I just don't feel comfortable. I'm going to go home. Well, I can tell you my reaction. I was like, I didn't say anything, but okay, have a nice trip home. I wasn't about to chicken out. I wasn't about to just walk away. My good friend signed off on that huge tent, that rental. Something could happen to it. So okay, I know squatches are here. I'm probably going to get more encounters tonight. So I decided just to circle my wagons. I mean, I even tipped up a picnic table on the side just to put it like a detection grid around my tent and my car, etc. I even put out a small personal alarm. Hooked up the fishing line. Type of personal alarm, you pull the pin and it shrieks at about 65, 70 decibels. And I put that all the way around my camp area. Because I'm pretty much assuming they're going to come. If they're that bold and brazen, they're going to come see me. So weather started moving in as it got dark. And we get drizzle and fog and a little bit of rain. It would stop, a little bit more drizzle. And so I had finished off a pot of coffee by 10 o'clock that night. And I usually, when I'm in the field, in a very larger tent, 10 by 16, where I have like a little office in there, my cot, I have L-shaped tables, folding tables, and a laptop out, etc. And so I'm writing in my notebook everything that transpires. So I want this fresh in my mind on the paper, and of everything that occurred that afternoon. And so it started approaching close to 11, and I'm writing everything that happened, and all of a sudden I hear that little personal alarm go off. Well, the first thing that happened is the hair on my arm stands up, and I'm like, wow, okay, what's going on? And I hear it. I look out. I was at the top of the door. I see nothing out there. Okay, maybe it was a stick or a squirrel or something got tangled up in the fishing line. So I go out there, and sure enough, there's the unit with the pin out of it, and that's the only way to turn it off. There's no switch or screw or something. And so I hold it up to the light, and I put the pin back in it, turn it off, and I'll put a little bit more slack in it just in case it was a bird or a stick or something. And I go back in. I'm sitting there, and now that the expedition's over, I took my rifle out of the car and I put it on the cot next to me just in case, who knows. So I carry a lever action rifle, and so here it is. About 45 minutes later, I hear the alarm go off again. This time I'm not thinking it's coincidence. I yell out, "Hey, don't mess with me." I didn't use such nice language. I'm armed. I'll shoot through this tent. So I go to put my boots back on. I reach up for the zipper, and the alarm turned off. Here, my neck raised up, everything. My first reaction, I grabbed my rifle. I chambered around. It's a 45-70. And I said, okay, well, we're going to go out the door. And so I unzip it real slowly. I look around. There's nothing there. I go to where the device was. It's gone. The device, the pin, there's just two ends of the fishing string just sitting there. And, oh boy, something had the intelligence and opposing thumbs that saw me put that pin back in that. So at this point, I'm getting kind of a little worried. Not enough to fire up the sat phone, but I'm getting a little worried. I put up more things around me. Behind my tent is big rhododendron bushes, and I have the picnic tables up on side. My camp kitchen, I have storage totes and a couple metal ammo cans I put tools in, all stacked up around me. I even backed my car up right over my own tent pins, so it was right close to me. And I figured if anything comes towards me, I'm going to hear it. That's my detection perimeter. And so I go back in the tent. I leave my boots on, my jacket on. I'm sitting in my chair. I got my rifle across my lap. And I'm thinking, let's go. Let's party. Whoever or whatever's messing with me, it's going to have to come to a head. I sat there after consuming a full pot of coffee, and I'm sitting there, and maybe it's a little past 12. The next thing I know, I'm laying in my cot. My rifle's next to me on the cot. My boots are still on. Daylight's starting to shine in the tent. The drizzle and the rain has stopped. And I hear something pitter-pattering, scratching on the outside of my tent, like a couple feet away. I'm kind of confused. I don't know. The last thing I remember is sitting in my chair, anticipating some confrontation. And I hear something moving. Again, I yell out, "Don't F with me. I'll shoot." And nothing. I unzip the top of the tent door, and there's a coyote standing on top of the picnic table. It had been pushed down, back on all four legs. He's standing on top of the picnic table, just staring at me. All right, boom, scare him away. And finish unzipping the door, and I look around. My totes are tipped over, the ammo can's pushed over. The whole camp is disheveled. And I'm thinking, what the hell happened? I remember sitting in my chair, and here I am, wake up in my cot. Okay. I push everything back. I start water for coffee, and I'm going to have a breakfast bar. And I'm sitting there, I'm writing all my notes down in my notebook of everything that happened while I'm waiting for the coffee pot to perk. And all of a sudden I hear this loud boom, sound like a 410 shotgun at about 100 yards away. And it's over where that tent is. I go, oh, crap. So I look around, I go, well, okay, I got to go check this out. So I turn the water off. I set my pen and my notebook down on the picnic table, grab my rifle. It's dense fog. You can't see more than 30, 40 feet in front of you. And so I proceed over to the big tent, make sure it's okay. So I'm not trying to steal it or whatever. I get over there, and on the left corner of the tent, there's a tree limb broke off a tree. That's about 6, 7 inches in diameter. It was broke cleanly off the side of that tree. And the first thing that came into my head was ambush. Marine Corps training, first word that came into my head was ambush. I go to a knee, I do 360 around me, look at everything near me, and I quickly proceed back to my camp. I get back to my camp, everything's fine, nothing, So I turn the water back on, I sit down in my chair, I get my notebook, and I look, my pen's gone. That's a special pen. The tip lights up so that when you're on night ops, you don't have to turn on your headlamp to take notes. The tip lights up. And a friend of mine gave me that pen. And what the hell? I must have put it in my pocket and dropped it somewhere. And I got really upset about that because a good friend of mine gave that to me. So coffee, water cooks, and make coffee, have oatmeal in the breakfast bar. And I go, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to write all this down and try to figure it out later. Right now, everything seems to be safe, but I'm not going anywhere without a firearm. And so I go to the restroom, I come back, and you know what? I'm going to go get that firewood. Where all this started from, this fire ring about 50, 60 yards away. There's a stack of red oak there. And so I go over there with a wagon, and I'm about to sit down at that picnic table where the fire ring is and load up the rest of that wood. And there's my pen on that picnic table. Well, that told me right away the intelligence of these animals to intentionally lure me away from my camp. They must have liked that orange-tipped pen, and they took it. And then when I came back, I must have did something to startle them because they left it on the table. At this point, I said, to hell with the wood. I go back to my tent. I poured a coffee in my thermos, and I just start packing up camp, get it in the car. I put the wagon up on top of the car, bungee it in, and I have my rifle in my hand. I walk around to the driver's side, and there's this white oily handprint on my driver's door window. That means they had been there watching me that close. And I didn't know it. So I open the door, get in, lock it, put the rifle next to me, and I just sped out of there. The rental company had not come yet. The tent was fine. I went out the gate and went to a spot that was a couple miles away where I knew there was cell phone reception. And I checked in with the coordinator, gave her a lowdown on what was going on, and said, the rental company, I passed them on the drive here to get cell reception. The tent will be fine. I'm going home. It took me a long time to get over that, what had happened. Even mentioning it to my support group at the VA, my PTSD support group, sitting at home by myself or waking up in the middle of the night feeling like something is grabbing my thigh or pushing on me or something is pushing my back. That just it still gets my crawl every now and then.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What is your take on the activity that these creatures display? Do you think it's just simply territorial, or do you think they're hostile? What do you think?
Well, uh, I don't want to think it's that intricate. Normally, it's been my experience that when a large group in an expedition leaves an area, we're humans, we leave trash, we leave food scraps, we do all those things. It's usually what happens is the night after the expedition pulls out, they leave, they come out of the woodwork looking for whatever we've left behind. And so they're, to a certain degree, they're probably familiar with our behavior in certain areas. And so they were looking for food. That's what I think. Obviously, if they had wanted to harm me, I was the only human being in this whole recreation area, this whole wildlife area. I was the only one. They could have done what they wanted. I couldn't have probably carried enough bullets to dispatch them. So I don't think. I think it's more of an animalistic thing for food and survival that drives it. But I also realize that they've survived probably by learning to stay away from the dangerous humans that have boomsticks. And so that's another part of that. That's part of their survival technique, is realizing what's a danger.
Yeah, absolutely. They are well familiar with people activity and how we work. It almost reminds me of mice. Like when you leave food out inside your house at nighttime when you're asleep, they come out, and when you wake up, there's no mice, but you can see their droppings, you can see sign, and you can tell something tore into like the bag of chips. It's like, dang it, something was here.
Yeah. Well, you got to think there is a level of intellect here. If we want to look at this sociologically, when First Nation and Native Americans first came to this continent, there's certain things and behaviors they brought with them. Let's take, for example, the Plains Indians and some of the Indians in California, as well as Nevada and Idaho, building teepees, putting up a stick structure and putting hides on it. This is sounding familiar. Did Squatch see that behavior and emulate it? Who knows? Or is it the other way around? The first humans that came to North America came from Upper Manchuria, the Gobi Desert, upper areas of Russia. They didn't build teepees there. They built sod huts. And they built structures using mastodon tusks and bones and whatnot, teepees. So you sort of have to ask the question, who taught who? I sort of suspect Squatches saw that Native Americans were pretty ingenious with the materials around them, and they emulated what they saw. Not so much with hides, but at least creating the structures with sticks and limbs and branches. There's another behavior that seems to be copied, and that's called the act of coup. Native American First Nations people, being able to touch an enemy or touch a foe and not be harmed was considered a very intense act of bravery. And here we have Squatch sort of emulating that. Countless stories of Squatch just laying in wait in a bush, and just all they would do is reach out and touch someone and then run away. Sort of makes you say, there's numerous other behavioral traits that is being observed. Another one, hunting. I actually watched a hunting party of Squatch. Being in Ohio, being up on this very narrow ridge, maybe no more than 40, 50 feet wide at its widest, going out to a pencil and having a U-shaped valley surrounding it. And just by dumb luck, going out there with 6 people in the middle of the night and sitting down, and within 15, 20 minutes, having things thrown at us from one side, from the north, and then within minutes, rocks and pine cones and acorns being thrown at us from the south on the other side. Well, we stand up, we're FLIRing the area, we're looking for our thermals, and lo and behold, right in front of us, 10 feet, there's this huge, large hot spot in your viewer. You figure who's shining a light at you or someone doing something hot right there. And you take the FLIR away from your eye, you rub your eye, you look back again, and there's the back of a head of a female Squatch running downhill from you. She must have been so close that when I looked at it with a viewer, it just looked like a big hot spot. And on either side of her is these smaller little hot spots, probably 4 or 5 feet tall. And they run down this valley to the north. They come up the slope of the parallel little peninsula there. And she's standing behind a bush at about 80 yards, weaving back and forth. And the temperature's in the upper 30s, low 40s, and you can actually see her breath exhale through the viewer. And the 2 littler ones are in trees on either side of her. Well, while that's happening, we notice that there's a deer right next to us, like 15, 20 feet away, just shaking and hiding in the brush right next to us. When she takes off, the deer just bolts. And the footsteps we heard behind us to the south, to the southwest, and the footsteps and the groans we heard to the southeast, they ceased. The one that was to the southwest, we hear and feel it run away. We suspect to probably chase that deer. To the southeast, that guy grunts and groans, walks up between the vehicles. We see his silhouette. He leaves a handprint on one of the SUVs, goes down to the north and rejoins with a female, and they take off down that trail. So what did we observe? We saw a female with 2 little ones chase a deer, supposedly towards the waiting hands of the 2 males. A hunting party. This is something quite similar that Native First Nation and Native Americans used to do 20,000 years ago. They would chase a small group of animals off a cliff. They would chase them into an awaiting group with spears and arrows and force them into it, i.e. a hunting party. So you got to ask who taught who, because this wasn't a behavior that was where they had come from. This is something that crafted a new behavior, hunting style, that was crafted here in North America. I suspect this Squatch probably watching their success, hunting bison, mastodon, and what else they could go after, antelope or deer, and they're probably emulating, copying that. So that hunting party was quite extraordinary. That's also when I got felt in my tent that same night. 2 Squatch coming into camp looking for food on a table, and they hide behind my tent because I'm on the outer periphery, and I could hear them breathing less than a couple feet away from me. I hear them sniffles and the groans, and they're breathing heavy because they've just run up the slope up to the plateau, and that's just like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are some excellent theories. It's difficult to determine if the Sasquatch learned it from us or if we learned it from them, or if it's simply behavior and tactics that are encoded in our DNA and just a result of being a hominid.
That's very true. As a scientist, I work with come up with the idea, the hypothesis, test the hypothesis, experiment, and maybe, if I'm lucky, craft a theory. Well, right now I'm in that model stage. I've created this model that I refine every day and tweak it every day. Some things I find I'm wrong, some things I find I'm right. Then other times I find new information that never occurred to me before, and I add that to the model. And this behavior is part of that. Knowing that Squatches like to look into vehicles. We have found handprints. In fact, I can tell you that there is a BFRO senior investigator that has crafted a fingerprint file on these Squatches. Like FBI has a file of fingerprints, he has a file of fingerprints of Squatches. And we've seen them return in certain areas time and time again. It's the same fingerprints. Nose prints up against the glass. They've learned how to open the car doors. Someone in their tent, they wake up and they find their car door swung open because they saw something potentially that was edible inside the car. That they had to have observed it many times, then gone out and practiced it and attempted it. That means they're good at observation and they're willing to experiment and try. And there's other items or other behaviors that they do that they seem to learn that from us. One of the traits we are starting to see in the field is, one, we know that if you have a long stick in your hand, they'll suspect it may be a weapon. Now we're starting to see that they're reacting to when we hold things up to our eyes, that maybe we can see them in the dark. Because we have observed behavior where in the past, it's their assumption, the Squatch's assumption, that we can't see them in the dark. And to a degree, we would play with that. You pretend you don't see them. However, now we're putting up FLIRs in night vision to our faces, and we're pointing right at them, and we can see them. And they may be learning that we can do that. So what we sort of try to reinforce is that, one, even if you're using aided vision devices, do not focus, do not point. Use your peripheral vision to observe. We don't want them to learn potentially that we can see them in the dark, where they're probably not accustomed to having a human do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So ignore the activity when it's happening, and possibly these creatures are able to learn if we're figuring them out. For example, looking through a monocular thermal, or if we got a drone in the air, they're figuring out that we're watching them.
Yes. Yeah. Later, being able to reason and anticipate their behavior, this model that we're crafting, and it's not just me. I have a very good friend, and I can mention her name. Her name is Lori Russell. She's kind of ill right now. Is my field partner, and bouncing things off one another and crafting this model of of behavior. And we had an occurrence where we actually entrapped one for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and we were able to trick it up into a little wooded area, about a quarter acre in size, and to rapidly surround it with about a dozen people. And we enticed it by circling this larger area with a Jeep, call blasting, and this juvenile came to look to see what's going on. And we recorded it on FLIR and with audio of it hissing and screaming and stomping back and forth. And it was just totally confused that this hadn't happened before. And the person operating the FLIR on my side of this wooded area, out of the blue, just says, he wants us to let him go. He wants us to let him go. And then I started thinking, you know what? Yeah, there could be some unseen circumstances from this we may not like. So I got on the radio, told everyone, back off. And sure enough, young Squatch took off running to the north, where we thought he would go. That led us into a situation the following day where the whole expedition was left, gone. It's Sunday morning. Everyone's gone except about 5 of us investigators. And we're assuming we're going to stay the night because we want to see what happens after the expedition leaves. If you recall, I referred to that earlier about actions by Squatches after an expedition leaves. And so this, during the day, daylight, one of our female members goes back to her tent, and she comes walking back towards base camp. She gets by the pit toilets, and she can hear something following her, paralleling her in the woods. She stops off to do her business in the pit toilet. She comes out, and there's a Squatch taller than the pit toilet, full head higher, perhaps 9.5, 10 feet. She comes out, she looks over left, and he sees her, and he immediately starts to squat down. Maybe it was his intent to pounce or what. She immediately dropped her cigarette, her chair, comes running and screaming. This was during the day, which is very rare. And so we obviously react. We go down, we went back down the hill to look for it, which may not have been a smarter way to react. So we made the decision, bring everyone up on this little hilltop. We circle our wagons and keep a fire going all night. And so that's what we did. Throughout the whole night, we were bombarded with something thrown at us. It sounded like someone took a backhoe and took the bucket and kept slamming it into the ground. You could hear it. You could feel it. We'd get the strangest whoops and owl calls. It's a donkey braying, and the whole night, just totally harassing us. Everyone stayed in a little mini trailer or slept in a car, except for me. I'm the hard-headed one. I slept in my tent, and lo and behold, I'm laying there. It's about 4 o'clock, and I see a hand just rake across the back of my tent, the full length, as if just walking by, taunting. And I get on the radio, hey, everyone, guess what? Get out, get your white strobe lights out. And got a situation. Well, we see the footprints, and he takes off into the forest. So we all made an agreement that we all get up at 5 to help 2 of the members get their stuff packed so they could leave and leave together as a team. So we did that. Remember now, all throughout the night, just constant, and all of a sudden it stops. The strange owl with a gravelly call to it, just we knew what that was. They weren't fooling us. And so we decided not to spend one more night there. That we must have pissed off, language, we must have upset that adult or maybe the parents of that young one the night before by keeping it confined into a 1/4-acre wooded area. They must not have liked that we had done that. And this was retaliation, pure and simple. Since going back there, because we've had 3 expeditions back to the same area, and again the same practice. We stay there past the expedition, me and a few other investigators, and we have all kinds of interaction with Squatch, strain lights. We even had at 4 o'clock in the morning, a totally blacked out helicopter going probably ground speed 20, 30 miles an hour over our campsite at about a couple hundred feet, just slowly going over us. No, it can't be an EMT flight or life flight. Why would it be going that slow? But all the lights were blacked out, and the only way you could see it was because of the moonlight. So there's something obviously going on there that's beyond all our comprehension.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. So you've noticed that the Black Hawk helicopters were hovering in the same areas that you guys were getting activity in. I've noticed that in the past where I had my sightings and there was a lot of activity taking place. I
Yeah.
noticed these Black Hawk helicopters flying around. Well, I was thinking at the time, well, that's normal. You know, there's a military base probably about an hour from here. But after the activity fizzled out months later, years later, no more black helicopters. Like, what happened to them? And I never see them anymore.
But one of our investigators is a retired Army helicopter pilot who is very, very well trained, very experienced combat veteran, going, that's not right. That totally violates all law of what they're doing. And why here? You know, that kind of thing. That had another expedition about a year and a half after that in Florida, North Florida, and I take a team out that night. I got 5 other people with me, and we're in an area where there's these palmettos that are about waist high, and then pine trees, and you can see for a good distance. And so we're sitting on this road, me and the rest of my group. And I send out walkers, a team of 2 people to go out to the east. They're the walk for a half an hour and then turn around and come back. And we're in radio communication. And then when they get back, I send out a team to the west, go out for half hour and come back. And the goal here is to sort of rustle up a potential encounter. If there's something out there in the woods, let's shake the trees. And so I got both teams out there, and one person is, we don't stand by ourselves, so there's one person standing with me. And both teams are gone, and all of a sudden, the entire forest around the 2 of us lightens up. When I say lightens up, it was like looking through night vision, like daytime. For about a good 100 yards around us, we could see clear as day. Now, the people that are my walkers, they're radioing in and saying, Marsha, what's going on? There seems to be a dome of light over you 2, about as high as a telephone pole. And it goes out about 20, 30 yards. I go, okay, thanks, but do you see a spotlight being shown at us? Maybe it's like a helicopter or something, think we're breaking the law. No, they don't. They see no helicopters in the sky, and it's a starlit night. There's nothing. But there's this dome of light over us, and we could see quite clearly. At this point, I grabbed my Garmin Mini inReach. I popped the cap off the SOS button, and I'm getting ready to push it, thinking this is not right. I'd rather beg for forgiveness. I'd rather ask for forgiveness than beg for mercy at this point. And so I'm getting, anything else gets weirder, I'm pushing this SOS button. We could end up a David Paulides chapter in a future book. I'm not sure. And all of a sudden, the darkness comes back. It's now night. The 2 walker teams, they've come back now in a rush. That light has gone. Well, we did lose radio reception just for a couple minutes. My EMF and EMR meters were off the scale in the red zone for about a good 30 seconds. Like I said, I do monitor EMR and EMF while I'm on night ops, along with some other instruments. And so it's like, what the hell just happened? I could never explain that. I don't know. Both of us who stayed back in the middle, they got the light on us. That night, I slept really sound. No medical or physical reaction or anything like that. It just, something told me that, I don't know, maybe we were in danger. That's why I popped the cap for my SOS button. I didn't push it, but I thought enough of the situation that I might have to.
Yeah. And as a researcher, a scientist, do you believe in the supernatural, and what do you think it was?
I keep a special notebook for those things that I just simply can't explain. I don't try to fit it into a model or a mold just to say it works. I take the notes on that kind of stuff and write it down, and maybe later it'll fit into something that can rationally explain it. I don't know. I've certain friends of the woo, we all know who the woo are, say that was probably one of those portals, potentially, or UFO. I don't know. I know the EMR readers were all the way red. We should have been irradiated and had severe health effects after that kind of exposure. I noticed on my sound analyzer, I did not pick up any infrasound at all. And in fact, the background noise sort of went to nil, less than 0 hertz or at 0 hertz for that time frame as well when I was monitoring with a spectrum analyzer. I don't know. It's in that category of let me write it down, let me put everything down I know about it, and hopefully one day it'll fit into something and I'll figure it out. I've had those encounters there that are not necessarily Bigfoot, but happened during that time. Had another one. This is Ohio, where I have a group out, and we're sitting between 2 old farmers' fields. And between the 2 fields, there's a small 1 acre, 1.5 acre lot of trees. On the other side of that is a 18th and 19th century graveyard, about 2 dozen headstones. And there was 6 people in the group, but 5 of us had FLIR. We see and hear something move in the woods. We all activate our FLIR. We're all set at white hot, and we're looking into these woods, and we see the outline of someone walking back and forth, but they're dark. They're black. They're not white hot. You can see the outline of a hat on one of them, on this, whatever it is, and it's walking back and forth. It's pacing. At one time, it seems to stop, and because of the body language, maybe looking at us, and we're all looking through the FLIR. We're going, this can't be happening. They should be white hot. There's someone moving around out there. We should see it, and it should be white hot, and we're all set, and boom. And as quick as it came, it left. The rest of the time we were in this location, we had the smell of like a real rustic men's cologne, sort of like a spoiled version of Old Spice that just permeated everywhere we were at. The first thought was, well, maybe some kind of weird snake, like copperheads do a cucumber smell or something. But no, it wasn't that. So how do you explain that? I can't. EMF and EMR were totally flatlined, nothing going on. Sound analyzer showed normal background noise. But yet all the FLIR set the white hot showed a black entity, a shadow entity, walking back and forth in the woods.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And what other experiences do you have in the special notebook of things you can't explain?
Well, I had an occurrence where This is in Pennsylvania. I can't say where, obviously. Um, yeah, sitting there with a group of 6 people, and all of a sudden, there's no wind. All the forest noise goes away. We have FLIR active everywhere. We got people with listening devices, everything else, and we record what sounds like cannon fire and like gunshots. Only lasted 20, 30 seconds, but it sounded like cannon fire. It sounded like someone firing muskets, that where there's a double explosion, a small one and a loud one. And we have it on recorders. We know we heard it. We know it's there. But I don't know how to explain that. Later that night, we go out there. Squatch gets over by one of the oil derricks that are near there, and it's throwing rocks at us. We get tree knocks from 2 different directions. We recorded the first time 52 tree knocks occurring at 2 different tones, so it was 2 different trees, but total of 52 tree knocks within a couple hours, going on back and forth, back and forth. Like we were in the middle of something and they didn't care if we were there or not. Can't explain that. But the cannon fire and the musket fire, is it Revolutionary War maybe? Is it Civil War? Maybe. I don't know. I just put it in my notebook of and I can't explain that right now. I just can't. Another occasion in northern Georgia. Again, these are all BFRO expeditions, and we're sitting there on top of a small hill and in a circle like we normally do. And the guy sitting next to me all of a sudden goes, "I don't feel good." And he bends over, he starts shaking his head, and he falls to the ground. And I look over towards him, and I see in the tree line, I hit with my FLIR, there's a squatch looking up over a tree log with my FLIR. I videotape in the FLIR, the video chip, gets up, walks through the woods, and walks away. While this is happening, he's experiencing what we think is like a mini stroke. We know now later he was zapped. And below us in the hill, it looked like a string of white Christmas tree lights about 10, 11, 12 feet off the ground, just going in and out of the trees. Didn't come near us, but it just seemed to stay off at about 50 yards, in and out of the trees and just circling back and forth. And then just like someone pulled the plug, gone. I can't explain that. Later, in more further research, I think I can explain the zapping. And I've put a lot of research. I've interviewed large mammal specialists at 2 different zoos, etc. I got an understanding, I believe, or a working model for that. However, seeing those orbs, just the geologist and meteorologist in me tells me that shouldn't exist. But it does. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah, so certainly strange activity taking place out there. Not sure what it is, but it is happening.
Yes. And that's happening along with, Squatch running through your camp and stealing food off tables and looking in the cars, sometimes pushing people through their tents. So there's a lot of things going on that you just have to sit back and take notes and then re-examine it later. I've seen other occasions where people have been zapped at different degrees, and I've come to learn that each person reacts differently to infrasound, and that infrasound is highly specific to the sender, because it's dependent on the length of the vocal cords, the compressed air behind it, the size of the voice box, etc., and the receiver, the configuration of those three bones in each ear, and the skull thickness, and everything else. Others may not realize this, but to be zapped, that Squatch has got to be within 20 to 40 feet of you. That's how it works with large mammals. I've gone to 2 different zoos to speak to professionals, PhDs, about that occurrence, and that is something that happens very close. And it's not like we think it knocks you out and it makes you freeze in space. It confuses you emotionally. It can cause you to have a reaction like vertigo or an upset motion sickness or something like that. It's enough to distract you that an attack is coming, which is why certain large mammals use it to hunt with. But other mammals like elephants and whales, etc., use infrasound, or at least sound in that wavelength, that 0 to 20 hertz, to communicate with others. And so with us, if a sender is sending out hertz frequency in the infrasound, and you are susceptible to that particular frequency, you're going to have a reaction where everyone around you may not. And quite similarly, Squatch may put out a signal, and only another Squatch can hear it, and not us. So far, that's what the research has shown me in the data. I have a high degree of confidence that's generally accurate description of it.
Yeah, I would agree. It seems like certain people are a lot more sensitive to the infrasound. And yeah,
Yes.
I do believe the Sasquatch use something similar to echolocation. Sometimes
Yep.
we can't hear it, but I think they can over long distances. I've noticed things on the video recorders. I'll hear like wood knocks that I never heard in the moment
Mm-hmm.
when we were having activity. And I'd review it, and it's a clear, solid wood knock. Sounds like someone's breaking a pool table, and it's
Oh, yeah.
definitely strange.
I've recorded uh, uh, with a spectrum analyzer, sound analyzer, from 0 to 20,000 hertz is the scale I'm working with, and it's on a logarithmic scale. I've recorded a 7.5 hertz and 11.5 hertz, 2 different alternating frequencies that went back to back like a call and answer type conversation. I've recorded that. Those are something that you can take back to a laboratory and examine, that says this entity over here was communicating with this entity, and here was their conversation. You would see the frequency of the call and response was not uniform like a piece of equipment sending out a signal. Sometimes the 7.5 hertz would be 2 or 3 seconds long, maybe a second long, maybe 10 seconds long, and there'd be a response in between. So here's some form of communication taking place. Now, so far, they don't know that we know that we're recording it. And if we start reacting as if we do, they may stop doing it. I don't know. That's part of my model, that they learn by watching us as to how we react to their behavior. So, and for example, with the long duration recorders, etc., there are screams and screeches out there that we send them off to a couple people who are affiliated with the BFRO, and we ask them to analyze them, and they just shake their head and go, nope, don't know. So you keep the recording, you keep it in a file, and okay, let's see if we ever ID this again. Just like how the Navy will track a submarine, it has a very unique tone, it has a very unique sound signature. Well, now we have a sound signature of something that's emitting a groan and a scream. Maybe we hear it again, maybe we record it again, and it matches up perfectly. Who knows? Just like my friend who has a fingerprint file of Squatches. He can tell you if there's fingerprints in your car, they'll go lift them just like a forensic investigator, and they'll compare them to their data file. Yep, he's been here twice before. We've seen these fingerprints 10 miles from here 5 years ago. We've seen these fingerprints maybe 30 miles in this direction 6 months ago. Something like that. And okay, so the data is catching up. The science is catching up. And it's just a matter of time. In certain parts, I regret that we're able to show that beyond a reasonable doubt that these animals exist. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like the BFRO is a lot more advanced than a lot of other research groups. And it's cool to see people collecting DNA, footprints, fingerprints, and all this information. And it goes beyond just saying, oh, it's a demon or it's just another person. They're a people. Like, there's got to be more to it. And I definitely do believe that. And it makes sense how these things can avoid people with ease. And yeah, I do believe there's something going on that we can't see or hear, and possibly some type of echolocation or sonar is at play. Definitely strange activity like we mentioned before. And I really do believe there's a way to figure this out. There has to be. And
there is.
There's people that say you can't sneak up on them. I've done it. I've snuck up on Sasquatch, but I've never seen the same one twice. And I think that makes sense, that they learn. Once they mess up, they never do it again. Or once they catch on to you, they figure you out, and they're able to learn and adapt to their environment.
Yeah, when we sort of entrapped that one for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, we got a young one to focus on a white strobe light on the other end of these woods. When we heard them, we got our radio and said, "Hey, turn on your lights." So they turned on, the setting on your flashlight, a white strobe. We had two of them going on, and he just totally asphyxiated on those two lights and didn't pay attention to what was happening around him. And so that's one, exactly as you were referencing. The other is walking into the middle of a hunting party. They didn't hear us coming, right? We just walked right in the middle of it. Maybe if we were there 15, 20 seconds later, we actually would have bumped into a Squatch, walked right into their back or something. I think we were that close. So yeah, it is possible. However, I've got to say, I don't want to discount and say the woo faction, the supernatural, the paranormal faction is wrong. I've seen things and heard things that I cannot explain, and so I don't want to tell them they're wrong. I experienced mind speak for the first time twice. If you had asked me a year and a half, 2 years ago, I'd say, nah, I'd shake my head. Now that I've heard it myself, sitting with a group, doing night ops, and hear someone from the forest behind me over my left shoulder call out my name in a soft feminine voice, Marsha, made me jump up and look confused. And then 6 months later, sitting in a completely different state in a research area of a friend of mine in my tent, hearing a voice come from the forest that says, go. What? Okay, maybe that's a frog, weird, or a bird or something. And I go out my tent and I'm listening and I'm listening. And then I hear Marsha. It knew my name.
Wow.
I don't want to discount the woo faction, and I don't want to, there are things that are happening out there that we just cannot explain, and there's a paranormal bent to it, and I don't want to discount that either. I'm just going to focus on the model and collecting the data. The BFRO is very good with that. There's a dual mission. One is public information and hoping to educate the public, and the other is collecting data. Now, the BFRO is not critter rare. It's not, hey, I got a family squatch in my back 40. They're eating my chickens. Come get rid of them. No, that's not us. That's not us. We'll come and study it. We'll take evidence. Say, okay, yeah, that's what you got. Well, we can certify, yep, that's what's happening. But we're not there to get rid of them. And likewise with the paranormal, supernatural, I can't sit here and being honest and tell you that it's wrong or it doesn't exist or it's imaginary. I know as a trained multidisciplined scientist, I have seen and heard things that I cannot explain. And in parentheses next to that, in large letters, yet. But until I do, me and my friends and my neighbors will call it supernatural and paranormal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At this point, you can't discount anything. And we live on a mysterious planet. Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying. Honestly, that sent chills down my spine when you were talking about the mind speak. And I've gotten a lot of reports about that where it says someone's name, it calls it out loud. And I wonder, like, how do they know your name? But now it hit me doing this interview, and possibly it was mind speak when someone hears their name called out, or if they hear something in the woods saying, help, help.
Yeah. Now, at first I was theorizing that in both situations, we were using radio communication, FRS frequencies, and the communication we were having was Team 1, Team 2, Team 3, base camp, and the only name mentioned over the airways was mine. Marsha, this is Team 1. Marsha, the base camp. Team 2 to Team 1. Marsha, are you copying? Mine was the only name mentioned over the airwaves. Is that significant? I don't know. It could be. It could be. Now, I do know in all these experiences I've shared with you, I've sat and I carry a set of 3x5 cards with me. And it's 3 different Native American languages. One is Iroquois, the other is Cherokee. And when I say Iroquois, I mean Oneidan or Onondagan, and the other is Navajo. And when I get in a situation out there, I will go to the tree line and yell out these phrases in Cherokee, or I'll yell it in Onondagan, Oneida Indian. Let's see if I get a response. It's an experiment. Only one time have I gotten a response. I don't know what was said. I could just write it down. But who knows? Maybe it's worthwhile pursuing. I don't know. To have a Native American or First Nations person go out in the woods and start singing traditional songs, yelling out to the forest whenever they come across a squatch, talk to it in their native tongue. Maybe that will have some kind of positive effect. I don't know. But it's part of what else we do. The taking people out there, and I tell myself and I tell the participants, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I know they exist. I've seen them in person at a range of 50 feet or less 3 times in my life. It is rare. However, I put myself into positions where there's a high degree of probability I'll have an encounter. And even so doing that, it's only been 3 times. However, I'm going to put you in a position where you could potentially have some kind of encounter, maybe an odor, you'll hear something, maybe you'll see something, maybe you'll sense something, and who knows? But convince you? Nah, that's not what I'm here for. I already know they exist. And
Yeah.
with that understanding, I love having skeptics come. I love having people go, I don't know about this one. Hey, that's great. That's great. Please pick it apart. Please analyze it. That's why when I go out on night ops, I have a backpack filled with monitors and electronic equipment. I'm monitoring electromagnetic radiation. I'm monitoring gravimetric changes, EMF, electromagnetic force changes. I'm monitoring sound. I'm measuring infrasound. I'm monitoring all these spectral phases of potential evidence and see what happens. See what happens. I do know that half the time, 50% so far, I've been able to detect a Squatch somehow interact with us, either running by us, sitting out there and watching us at 20, 30 yards in eye shine. When I get infrasound from two wavelengths going back and forth with one another, that tells me there's a Squatch very nearby, because the effective range of my microphones is only, at best, maybe 50 yards, 60. So when I see on my meter EMF spike up, EMR goes up, and then I'm watching infrasound at 10 and at 12 or 7 and 13 or something like that. And I've seen this conversation take place. Half the time I've been able to say convincingly to myself, yep, there's a Squatch here, before we hear the footsteps, before we hear the branch breaks, before we sense the smell. I can detect that it's there. And so far, I've been, knock on wood, I've been successful 50% of the time for it occurring. So 8 out of 16 times, I've been right.
That's incredible. And it's awesome to hear that someone out there is deploying a lot of different tactics, using high end gear and collecting data. I suspect that the BFRO has figured out methods that they probably don't talk about openly. And they'd have to, because they've done so much research and there's a lot more equipment out there. What do you believe has worked the best for you with your research to experiencing the activity?
I think, and this is going to sound probably counterintuitive, I think putting yourself in a position where there's not a lot of people around, in the forest, go out there with you and one friend, a good friend, set up a tent, set up a campfire, and just talk normal and interact with nature normally. If there's a Squatch in the area and it's just you two there, they will find you. They will find you. They'll come visit you between midnight and 4 or 5 in the morning. Put a recorder in your tent, stay awake, do what you got to do, and you'll hear it. You'll hear them walk up to your tent. You'll hear them smell your car or walk around the corners of your tent, and you'll hear a gruff or a groan. And they'll stay, typically they stay for 2, 3, 4 minutes. They see there's no food, they're gone. I don't encourage people to gift or leave food out unintentionally. That could start precedents that now if they don't get food, they get angry. I wouldn't recommend that. However, just putting, look at the Bigfoot mapping project, look at the BFRO database. Most people have a good sense about them. They can look and say, wow, look at this one county in North Carolina. It's got 3 times more reports than anywhere else in the state. You know what? I'm going to find a campground in that area. You'll spend a couple nights. Again, do not do it by yourself. Go with a friend, a couple friends, but isolate yourself away from other folks where you are in a position to encourage an encounter. And if maybe the first night, nothing, but second or third, you'll probably get a visitor at night. You may even smell them. But I find that's probably the most encouraging way to have an encounter. Have a little small recorder. Olympus and other companies make real inexpensive audio recorders. In fact, now they have this micro technology, little Wi-Fi cameras big as a button on your coat that will Bluetooth to your phone. Put one of those out. Don't put out a game cam because they sense the IR, but like most other animals do, deer and bear, etc. However, you can put a little micro camera or something, a Bluetooth to your phone. Who knows? Maybe you'll pick something up. Maybe you'll get a shadow that corresponds with that audio recording. It doesn't take a whole lot of money. It just takes being a little common sense and put yourself in a position to have a higher percentage of an encounter. Again, the BFRO database, you can check that by county, look at the state map, and you can see where the predominance of reports are. You can look at the Bigfoot mapping project that cooperates with the BFRO, and you can see, oh, wow, there's 50 dots right there in that one little area. There's a beautiful state park there. You know what? I'm going to go there in the middle of the week when no one's around, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Just camp out for a couple nights.
Yeah.
That's how you'll get an interaction.
I agree. The encounters I had were in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
It seems like when people are busy working, middle of the day, everyone's at school, these things come out to play. And it doesn't have to be nighttime. I know a lot of people say they're nocturnal, but they move during the day.
No, in my current, in the current South Carolina expedition that comes up in November, by the way, that sold out in less than 24 hours. Thank you, everyone. We had an occurrence. We're doing a reconnaissance there and walked to the restroom, and 50 feet away in the middle of the day, they have trash receptacles there that have heavy metal lids to dissuade raccoons and possums, etc., to go after trash. And we hear the handle lift and the lid slam 4 times. We were the only ones in the park. No rangers, no anything. Just us two. And we hear slam, 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 slam. Okay. We walk back there. Be careful. We look around. We start searching. And sure enough, there's a 14 to 16-inch footstep in the loose sand. Sure enough, right there. That was during the day, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, they're there. We know they're there. And so, again, putting yourself in a situation safely. I'm not saying go out in the middle somewhere and, get caught up and be in the next chapter in Dave Paulides' book or something. What I'm saying is be smart, go with a friend or two, and have a nice, quiet little campground, cook some food. And if you do spot something, experience something, don't point, don't yell, don't run, don't scream. Let them think you don't see them. They'll come closer. If they think they're getting away with it, they'll come closer. I've had eye shine from the back of my tent looking at us from 25, 30 feet because we acted like we didn't think he was there. So I think that's the best way to do that. And then once you have your encounter, like I said, don't overreact. Be respectful of the area. Always, camp, trek in, trek out. Don't leave trash behind. And, hey, chalk it up. You had a great experience and leave. Okay? Don't try to feed them or hunt them. Or we're not out there to hunt. I'm a firm believer in non-kill. I don't want to harm these animals at all. And to some degree, you have to suspect one of the ways to protect them is let them stay a myth. That could be a way to protect them. So who knows? However, I know my passion is being out in the woods 2 or 3 weeks out of every month, different locations, and encountering this big guy, and and sharing that with others.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure you guys get a lot of reports where it's not just deep in national forests or state parks, but you get reports where people live right outside of a small town. Maybe there's houses around, but there's still woods and they're experiencing activity, having encounters. Do you guys get a lot of stuff like that?
Yeah, there's a mixture of that where right on that edge of urbanization and woodlands, right in that edge, right where those two meet, there's a higher amount of reports made. At the same time, there's a wonderful lady that lives out near Savannah, and bless her heart, she's in her mid-80s. She lives in a little quarter-acre lot in the house that she grew up in. And she's not in the town, but she's in the community. And she'll call you up 3-4 times a month, tell you there's a family Sasquatch living in her backyard. Okay. So every once in a while, I drive down there with a dozen donuts and a gallon of sweet tea, and I sit and visit with her for a couple hours. And there's nothing there. So sometimes those reports come in and just, people, for whatever their reasons, are not being 100% accurate. And that's part of the job, is sorting those out and still encouraging them to maintain their curiosity, but at the same time, it's not a verifiable report.
No, I get a lot of those too. I had a guy in Missouri contact me a while back, and he wanted me to come out. He was very adamant about the Sasquatch showing up to his place. I was really excited. It sounded like there was a lot going on there, but he showed me on a map, and he's sitting in the middle of town. There's no woods or nothing. And I'm just like, what?
There's a considerable amount of reports. You look at California up near Idlewild and Big Bear, where because of the behavior of the folks, Friday till Monday morning, you get 10,000 people flood an area where there's normally a population of 200 or 300. And as soon as all those tourists leave Monday morning, Monday night, the Squatches come out and they're digging through Dipsy dumpsters or rooting through trash cans, etc., for food. They'll walk right through the middle of town because there's no one there.
I thought about that too, because he was having all these encounters at nighttime when it get dark. So I was like, maybe it's possible there's a tiny strip of woods in a ditch line and tons of houses around. Maybe.
Yeah, same thing as Julian, California. Great place if you're looking for fresh baked apple pies and breads. Oh, it's a mecca for the locals who know. And reports come in from there. Reports have been with Native Americans in the area, including the Agua Caliente and the Pachanga tribes of the Mission Band of Pachanga, Mission Band Agua Caliente Indians, of Squatches in those foothills for hundreds of years. Reports from Marines in Camp Pendleton. I know when I was there, so saying, there's something out there about 8 or 9 feet walking around in the desert. I mean, you should be able to see it. But going through town, there's a couple festivals that go through Julian, real small, charming town. And the motorcyclists go through the hills, the beautiful riding on their bikes. And right around dusk, the last guy on the bike who's a quarter mile back because he don't want to push his bike, all of a sudden, Squatch runs across the road right in front of him. That's the middle of town. So it happens. But usually when it does, it's in a heavily tourist area, like Julian, like Idlewild, like Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead, Lake Tahoe. When you look at reports in those areas, you'll see it's during the non-peak time when the tourists generally leave, and it's just the locals. and that's when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that do? That fits the model of them hunting for food. All the trash that gets left behind. That sort of fits that model.
Yeah. Even though I'm skeptical of some of the reports, I remain open-minded, and I don't discount the supernatural, and I keep it in my own special folder as well. Anything's possible, and you just got to treat them like anyone else.
Exactly. And all data is good data. There's a phrase in the Marine Corps: all recon is good recon. Even if it's negative, it proves a positive, right? So the same thing with this. All data is valuable. Even if it proves that nothing is there, it's still good data. And so, every once in a while you get people out there that aren't 100% honest, and that's fine. You have to anticipate that, but you keep track of all the information.
No, for sure. I've spoken with a lot of people that said they saw a giant buck. It was a huge buck, and it was like a little bitty 6-pointer. They're like, "Look at it, it's huge." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. The average story from the fisherman, it was how big, but yeah. Okay. But for those observations, taking a group out on a hike once on a Tennessee expedition, we go down across this creek. We're going to go out through this area in the forest, and 2 different groups went down the same trail, and came back. It wasn't until the 3rd group went by. The guy just happens to look to his left. There's a squatch looking at him from over a fallen tree. How many times did all of us pass this during the day, sort of close to a town, and we went by it twice before? Boom, there it was. He was right there, hiding in plain sight. So, again, if you put yourself in a position to where you increase your odds in doing it safely, I want to make sure your listeners are not interpreting what I say as to put yourself in danger. Do not put yourself in harm's way. At any time you feel anxiety, you feel like you have vertigo, you feel just uncomfortable, leave. However, you go out into the woods in an area where there's a high amount of preponderance of reports. You stand a good chance of having a visitation at night.
Yeah, I would agree. The best tactic is to just go out in nature, and that's the best thing you can do, because you can try playing music or playing flute sounds or leaving food out, cooking bacon, but in the end, the only thing that matters is that you're out there. And another tactic is, like you said, search the BFRO database and look at the Bigfoot mapping project. You'll see all those dots in a certain area. Maybe it's the Uwharrie National Forest or whatever it's called. And, you just find a good spot out there where there's no people, and maybe you'll experience something.
Yeah, a little trick from those who are out there. I don't cook bacon over a fire with a frying pan and a fire. I buy cheap bacon bits and sprinkle them on my campfire. Just as effective. And that it seems like the imitation cheap bacon, the odor just seems to permeate a lot farther.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I've thought about getting
keep it refrigerated.
Yeah, I thought about just like collecting bacon grease and leaving it out by the recorders, or maybe getting like vanilla extract. And I remember Ron Moorhead saying when he got that audio recording, they were cooking stew. Stew takes a long time to cook. It's a slow cooked meal, and it leaves a scent that lasts a long time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You talk about scent. Part of my medical health care is I have to use a hormone patch of estrogen. And I used to ask myself why I was getting an innate amount of encounters. It might be because they can smell the pheromones of those patches that are on my skin. But we experimented with that. A friend of mine, BFRO investigator, a retired veterinarian, biologist specialist out of Washington, he comes out and visits us in Tennessee, And hey, let's give this a shot. So I take a couple of my hormone patches and we go rub some leaves around us and leave them on the bark and stuff like that. And we wait around a couple hours. Nothing happens. And some of us leave. We figure we'll go to the backside of the hill, make some noise, and maybe push something towards us. And while we were gone, the two people that were back had two silhouettes walk between the vehicles, grunt at them, and go towards the tree where the pheromones were, and then ran off up the hill. That was a pretty good observation.
Yeah,
very good observation. So I thought that was, I don't want to do that again. One, because it is a prescription. And two, I don't want to, how to put this politely, I don't want to get a male Sasquatch excited and have him track me down in my tent. That's not an encounter, that I'd want to have. If you get my point. Some excited state Sasquatch looking for the source of those hormones. That would not be fun. So I've quit doing that.
yeah. Is there any way to get these pheromone chips? I know there's a BFRO guy that would sell like gorilla pheromone mixed with like human women.
Yeah, I don't know about all those. Like I said, I use my own medical estrogen patches that are prescribed to me by a doctor at the VA, and I have to apply 3 of them to my skin, twice a week, etc. And to deal with a hormone imbalance. And so that's what I pulled out and used. Now, all these other things of gorilla urine or other stuff, I can't attest to that. I would encourage others to have a safe encounter. I wouldn't put out any kind of gifting like that unless you're with other people who are really experienced with doing this kind of thing. I give you an idea about how you do something the wrong way. The first time I went out squatching on my own was the Little San Bernardino Mountains in Riverside County. And I go out and I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm all energetic, and I find a nice little isolated campground out near Cherry Valley in the mountains there in Riverside County. And I got permission to be there. And I bring with me a 1/4 bushel of some really soft peaches and plums. They're starting to attract fruit flies and whatnot, so they're really smelly. And so it gets to be nighttime. I start a fire, and I start chucking these peaches and plums all the way around my campsite. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to bring in a family of squatches. That's what I'm thinking to myself. So it gets to be about midnight. I hit the hay. I lay awake as best I can inside my tent. And lo and behold, within an hour, I hear movement out in the grass. I can hear strange scratching and all this stuff all the way around me. I think I got it. So I get out of my tent and then get ready to start snapping pictures. And I noticed that a family of skunks had totally encircled my tent and going after all this fruit. That's how not to do it. So, I've never done that again.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can certainly attract a lot of local critters when you leave food out, and it's just really hard to determine what took the food.
Yes, exactly. So that's one of the first experiences I ever had squatching. And I shared that story on the blue boards when I used to participate with those at the BFRO, and everyone got a big chuckle out of it. However, it taught me that you can't take this stuff for granted, and the people who go do this on a regular basis, they know a little something about what they're doing. All props to you, and I see you out there. I hear about you out there. doing what you can to get data, information, etc. That is totally cool. That's totally cool. That's the proper way to do it. Going out and throwing a bunch of peaches and stinky bombs out in the forest to attract wildlife is not the way to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm sure I've tried a lot of things that probably don't make sense and probably won't work, but you can just check them off the list and try something else. But I definitely know the Olympus 720DM audio recorders work great. The Autel Alpha thermal night vision drone works good, and just having a camera on you, I mean, you just never know what you're going to see. Maybe you'll come across a Sasquatch that had no idea you were there, and you'll be glad you had a camera, and maybe it'll be the next Patty footage. But for the most part, I feel like they're well aware when people have cameras, guns, and they know you're hunting them.
I usually for expeditions, I have a body cam active when I'm on night ops. Same kind law enforcement use. They're a little pricey. I have that going. It's on my front jacket. And I also have a GoPro 13 Hero going as well, checking out my six behind me and on my sides, recording. Because you never know. You never know what's going to be on there 6 months from now when you're going through countless hours of digital recording. You might see a glimpse of something in there, but at least with the body cam, it's wherever I am that records the sound and video of everything going on around me. And so far, that's been a successful tool. Got a great recording through the mosquito mesh of my tent of a Squatch standing next to another investigator's tent. And he had a hold of the tent pole, gently shaking the tent. So that demonstrated to me that it worked quite well.
Yeah. There's so many tactics you can try, and I'm glad to hear that there's other people out there doing research. And you mentioned being out there for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. I wish I had time to do that, and that's definitely the way to go.
Well, I'm fortunate in that I'm a triple dipper. I have my retirement from the Marine Corps, I have my retirement for Exxon Mobil, and now I have Social Security. So I have the wherewithal to go do that. And it's just something I like to do. Even if I don't have any encounter, the fact that I can go out to a park and just lay in a hammock and enjoy the wind and the critters and the lake, and I thoroughly enjoy that. That's just where I feel at my best.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Marsha, I feel like this was a really good podcast, and I definitely learned a lot from you. Do you have any more encounters, any Class A sightings that you'd like to share, or does that sum it all up?
Well, that one where we had gone and we set up all our tents where we could all spy on one another, and everyone had to sit by and watch the other tent all night. And lo and behold, we say a juvenile, maybe a young adult, that 7.5 foot range, comes right up to my friend Kathy's tent, and it's got his hand on the tent pole and right next to a tree that was next to them. And so we have a good idea for the height and the width, etc. And if you do a compression test on the soil, you have a good estimation as to the weight of the animal. And that right there, it was like, wow. He was not bashful. And that was another Class A sighting that we were able to observe.
Wow. What did this one look like?
This one had black hair, conical head, ears on both sides of its skull, not on top. Its face, at that distance, you couldn't really see a exact face details. However, the nose seemed to be a little recessed. The eyebrow ridge seemed to be a little bit more predominant. Muscular. Now, compared to other juveniles, let's see, this one was much more muscular. It still had a defined neck, but it was much thicker than what I've seen in the past. The shoulders were broader, more muscular. The arms hung pretty low, fingertips probably almost to the knees, a few inches above the knees. Me being 6'7", when I see another animal that's a foot taller than me, I notice all those little things. The other thing, the calves and the buttocks were really heavily muscular. Another observation to point out to yourself and your listeners, this is a good friend of mine pointed this out, okay? When all these reports, do you ever hear of someone reporting a belly button? That would suggest that they have a belly button, that they are a placenta mammal. No one ever reports seeing a belly button at all. I've never seen one.
Yeah, I've never noticed that on one.
Yeah, because it would tell you that means live birth, a placenta, etc., umbilical cord. Do they do like some tribes in Africa and some groups in South America where the female or birthing mother will actually bite the cord? The women sometimes will cook the placenta and eat it as a village, as a group. No. So now I try to make it a point to see if there are people who observe a belly button. Don't know. Like I said, a good friend of mine, he brought it up that perhaps these are not animals like we suspect they are, that maybe they are, what did he call them, Nephilim? I can't say yes or no to that. Again, it's part of that woo factor that I don't know. However, I had the privilege of being out there with him on a trail a couple times and telling me to record behind me and all these other things. And so I felt kind of privileged to have shared that. But anyhow, if anyone spots a belly button, please point it out. I'd like to know, because I have yet to find one.
Yeah. And I wonder the same. I mean, with a creature that's covered with hair, it's hard to determine that unless you see one that doesn't have any hair on its chest, which you get those reports. But yeah, I'm curious to know if anyone else has seen a belly button on a Sasquatch.
Exactly. I don't know, but just, if these are in fact a mammal, if in fact they're an animal in the forest, let's start looking at all the physical characteristics that should be there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of them is going to be a belly button. And no one's reported one at all. Yeah. So maybe it's because of the excitement of the encounter. That's the last thing to look at, or they see a penis or they see breasts, so they're not going to worry about seeing a belly button. Who knows? But at the same time, no one has reported one. I find that odd.
Yeah, I've never had anyone report that it had a belly button.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Marsha, we're running out of time, and I appreciate you.
I hear you.
Yeah, you did an excellent job.
Well, thank you. Like I share with the others, if you want to check in with me about every 6 months, I'll give you an update.
That sounds good, and hopefully I can have you back on in the future, and I'm sure you have a lot more information to share, and definitely keep in touch, and maybe we can communicate back and forth about different tactics and gear to use, and I'd like to learn more and just gather more data myself.
Understood. And that goes both ways, Miguel. You learn something, even if it's a little tidbit. Maybe it's a specific type of drone that you like over another. Put that out on the airwaves. You don't have to do it to me personally, but put it out there. Share it with your peers. And just like I shared with y'all about putting bacon mitts on the fire or not looking directly at them, monitoring infrasound, those are all things we need to share amongst our peers.
Yeah. Absolutely. And right now, I feel like the Altel Alpha drone that I just purchased is the best piece of gear that I have because although it's loud, you can have it flying above you and you can zoom in miles and miles away and see it
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah, I've noticed though there's some places where we do expeditions, it is prohibited to have a drone.
Yeah, there's certain
Or
areas.
yeah, or you have to have a specific license type to operate a drone in that area. And so
It seems like it's
I
in the
don't
best
know enough
areas
about
too.
it. Yeah, probably, but I don't know. I'll admit to you, I don't know enough about them. I know I played around with one that cost $100 in my backyard. I lost it within an afternoon. Never found it. So that's my extent with drones. So
Yeah, the best way is just to have boots on the ground, be out there,
mhm,
and spend as much time as possible in nature.
exactly. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You enjoyed nature.
Yeah, and
So
although they don't like the cameras, if you come across structures or an awesome track, at least you got a camera to document it.
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
That's why I recommend the body cams. They just record continuously. You know, you can get ones out there like mine will do 10 to 12 hours, depending on the quality setting. And just walk around, do your normal stuff at camp, and have that body cam running. Um, at the end of the night, pull the chip out, put another chip in it, do it again the next day. You never know what might happen. The last bit of technique is before you go to bed at night, every night, before you zip up that tent, take a quick picture of your camp. And when you get up in the morning, compare it to the picture you took when you went to bed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good point. I've never thought about
Yeah.
that. I'll definitely keep that
Yeah.
in mind because the last time I
Okay.
camped at one of my research areas, I heard something stomping around. I mean, I went to bed like at
Hmm.
3:30 in the morning and I woke up around 4:30 or 5 and I heard something stomping. I could hear it
Hmm.
breathing just like and
Yep.
I thought it was my friend Adam that got up to take a leak and then as I was hearing that noise outside of camp, I heard him slightly snoring in his tent and I was like, "Wait, that's not him." And I fell
Yeah.
asleep and then I woke back up. I don't know if it was minutes later and I heard the same thing. And I was just kind of too afraid to go outside. And I just fell into a deep sleep. And I woke up the next morning saying, man, this happened. And I don't know if it was a dream. And my friend Adam said, weird. I heard the same thing.
Yeah.
But
Well, if you get up in the morning and compare the two pictures, you see that maybe a solar panel has been moved or a chair has been tipped over or something like that. Yeah,
mhm.
and you'll see it. It'll be quite obvious to you.
Yeah, I don't know. It was making a racket. You could hear pots and
Yeah.
pans moving, and they were like in a container. But when I woke up the next morning, everything was the way it looked before I went to bed.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Miguel, it's been really nice chat with you.
Yep.
And let me know if you ever want to chat again.
Yep. That sounds good. And I appreciate you for taking the time and openly sharing these experiences on the channel. It really means a lot.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Want to spread the data and get the news out there.
Absolutely. And just let me know if you need anything in the future. Okay.
I shall. Take care.
Yep. You take care. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching this powerful conversation with Marsha from the BFRO. Marsha's research, fieldwork, and experiences shed new light on the mystery of Bigfoot and the government's possible interest in these encounters. It was certainly insightful hearing about the different tactics the BFRO uses and all the different equipment that they use out in the field. It would certainly make sense that there are frequencies being used out in the forest that we cannot hear being produced by Sasquatch, and possibly our equipment is able to pick it up. It could be possible the Sasquatch have a built-in sonar or possibly use echolocation similar to bats. Bats use echolocation. They emit high-pitched sounds and listen to how the echoes bounce back. From the echo pattern, they can construct a kind of 3D sound map of their environment. Could it be possible the Sasquatch are utilizing these same techniques to survive out in the forest? And it's my theory that possibly The tree structures that are being found all around the world represent these 3D maps that are constructed by sound. This lets them detect not just the presence of an object, but also its shape, size, texture, and movement. Maybe instead of researching primate behavior and human behavior, it would be best to understand every single ability that animals possess in the animal kingdom to better understand the Sasquatch. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and if you have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter, feel free to get in touch with me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys can, make a donation to the channel. It certainly helps the channel grow and to continue running. Thank you everyone for your positive support, and until the next one, you guys be safe out in the forest.